did some research about some of the cryptid sightings in my Monsters in the Midwest book and linked them to a number of UFO sightings that occurred at the same time. So some people think that it could be some sort of an alien type of creature. And then some people think it's just a creature that we haven't been able to identify yet.
On this episode of the Cryptid Crew podcast, I would like to introduce writer, author, and co-host of Darkness Radio, Jessica Freeburg. Jessica, thank you for joining the show.
Hey, Mark, thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, absolutely. I've been excited about this one and kind of want to dive into some topics or books you've written. But before that, can you tell the listeners and myself what got you, I guess, inspired you to write paranormal and about cryptids as well?
Yeah, I'll try to give you the kind of abbreviated version, so we're not here all day. Honestly, when I started writing books, I thought I would write picture books. So that's what I tried to write first. And I probably tried to write those for a couple years before I finally realized I'm more of a novelist or like longer storyteller than a picture book allows. And I was actively involved in an organization. I was a regional leader for an organization that brought in speakers for people who wanted to write, publishers, agents, that sort of thing. And I'd have critiques and do these workshops, and they'd always say, write what you know, like write what you're familiar with, write what's natural for you. And I sat down and thought about that, and I was like, gosh, what I know is like ghosts and creepy things, because I was always the kid around the campfire back in high school who had the ghost stories to tell, but a lot of them were like my own personal experiences, because I just had a lot of experiences with ghosts. And I feel like that's kind of true for a lot of us who get into this field. A lot of the people who go running around chasing after ghosts, it's because, we kind of want confirmation that this is a real thing. Like, we're not totally crazy. I had a lot of those personal experiences with paranormal, with seeing ghosts and experiencing ghosts in my life growing up as a child. And then into my older years, my kids started to point out things that they were seeing. They were starting to see some things. And so when I sat down and thought, okay, I'm not a picture book writer. I'm a novelist. I'm going to write a novel. I'm going to write what I know. So I wrote a novel about a girl who sees spirits and can tell the difference between the good and the bad spirits. And that allows her to solve like a murder mystery in the book. So that was my first novel. And I don't know. Then I just kind of dove into, head first, like, how do I connect with people who might want to read my book? And I came across Tim Dennis and Dave Schrader at a paranormal convention I was working at. I was interviewing and doing some sound bites for the convention, and ran into those two, and they invited me to come in to the studio. And after my initial interview with them, Dave said, come back anytime. And I was like, cool, I'll see you next week. So I just started coming every week. They couldn't get rid of me.
No, that's a good thing, I guess. Let me ask you this, Jessica. I know you mentioned you saw ghosts, or you have had some type of paranormal experience. Is there one or two that sticks out to you more than others?
Gosh, there's actually one. You guys could actually watch an episode on My Horror Story, which I believe is on the Travel Channel. You can probably stream it on Discovery Plus or a platform like that now. Talking about an experience my family had when we first moved to Minnesota and we purchased a home. I'm going to back up. Our first home that my husband and I purchased was in Nebraska, and someone died in the house. We didn't know that at the time. I kept asking before we closed, like a real big weirdo, like, has anyone died here? And they kept telling me, no one's died here. And at the closing with all of the agents in the room again, I was like, are you guys sure nobody died in this house? Because I just, like, you kind of sense things, but also like, I didn't know if anyone died there. I didn't see a ghost when we went on the walkthrough or anything like that. Turns out that someone had committed suicide in the house. And after we moved in, I started to have a lot of experiences. The very day we were moving boxes in and stuff, everyone had left to go get something at like Home Depot or someplace like that. And I was in the house alone, and I was upstairs at the end of the hallway putting some towels away in the linen closet. And I heard someone walking downstairs, and I could hear the very distinct sound of people walking across the kitchen floor. And so I just thought everyone was back. So I started talking to them. I was like, gosh, that didn't take you guys very long. And heard some things move around down there. So I just assumed they were in there doing stuff. And I walked down, and it was completely empty. And maybe 10 minutes later, they came home and walked in the door. And I was like, okay, tell me that you guys were just in the house and nobody was there. But that just kind of escalated. It just kept going on for, the next several months that we lived there. I would see a woman. Sometimes I would see her on our bathroom floor crying, like kind of curled up, laying there crying. And then she would be there 1 second and then gone. Sometimes I'd wake up and see her standing in the doorway, just like looking at us while we slept. It was super creepy. So then we got rid of that house. Actually spoke to the real estate company that we bought it from, and the legal loophole, they didn't have to tell us anyone died, but because I asked and they lied about it, they had to buy the house back. So we were able to actually get them to buy the house back. We bought a different house, but then we moved to Minnesota, and I was very cautious to make sure we did not buy a house that anyone died in, but it ended up being haunted anyway. So I came to the kind of sad conclusion that maybe it's not the house, maybe it's just me.
That's unnerving, and that's probably a question you don't hear too often at a closing.
Yeah, and she just kept asking.
So I guess let me ask you this: is that a loophole in just Nebraska, or is that something that you've checked on since then?
So it varies by state. It just is dependent on the state. Some states do have to tell you if somebody died under violent circumstances. So like if there's a murder in your house, they might have to tell you, but some states don't require them to tell you anything at all. So it just depends by the state. But actually the agent who sold the house to us, so it wasn't our representative agent, but the one representing the house, that was a cousin of the woman who had committed suicide. So she totally knew. So she lied about it. So they can't lie. At any state they can't lie.
Right. Yeah, that's something, like I said, you probably or they don't hear much of. And I'm assuming, so you had enough activity in that house. Is that what caused you guys to move, or did that help you guys move?
That is why we moved. And we had the president of the real estate company come to our home. They didn't want to buy it back, so they were going to try to talk us out of it. And I'll just never forget, it was the biggest real estate company in Nebraska, and the president of the company is sitting in my little kitchen, and we're talking, and I just said, "You don't understand. I see dead people, and I keep seeing this woman in the house, and I would never choose to live in a house that someone died tragically in." I feel like fast forward now, like to current day me. So that was 25 years ago. That was a long time ago. I feel like I could probably handle it now. But at that time, I didn't understand the spiritual realm the way that I do now. And I think now I understand it better, where you can be coexisting in a space and you have more power over a space than a spirit does. And so I would probably just work on keeping the space clear and clearing that energy out and making it more positive. I don't know that I would flee like I did then, but then I was scared.
Absolutely, I would be. And we've had some things. I'm not really sure if I even want to acknowledge it, but
Oh, yeah.
I try to put it in the back of my mind. But yeah, I've seen an orb, and I did not tell my wife about this. Like probably 6 months, maybe after the fact, I had
Uh-huh.
gotten up one night, woke up. I guess I was thirsty or hungry or something, maybe around midnight or a little after. Walked into the kitchen, and I was just kind of leaning against the counter, and the stove light was on. That was the only light on, and out of my peripheral, a white flash kind of came by through the wall. I was, I guess, standing against, and went through the wall I was looking at, and I thought, okay, I'm in here by myself. I just saw that. I'm pretty sure. So I'm going back to bed, and I'm not going to mention anything about it. And so, but yeah, I get that. I
Yeah.
get. being unnerved is something that can definitely happen. Did that
Yeah.
story show up in any of your novels that you wrote?
That one, not specifically. I feel like the first novel that I wrote, the girl, I kind of joke she's me, only like on steroids. Like she's having these really cool experiences with her. I'm going to call it a gift because I definitely like not everybody can see spirits quite as easily as other people can. And I know that's just how I was wired. It's been happening to me literally my entire life. So a lot of my stories in the book or that came out in that character are things that happened to me when I was younger, like seeing my grandmother, and those type of things. But yeah, the book is very inspired by me. There's scenes in there. If you knew me in high school, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that happening.
Right. Let me ask you this: out of the books you have written, what's one of your favorites, or is it hard to pick?
I love them all. I would call my books my book babies. So, kind of like my children, I don't have a favorite per se. They're all good. I do love The Homecoming. That's that first novel that I wrote. Um, because I don't get a lot of time to play in novels. I write a lot of legend compilations, which are a little bit different style of writing. I love doing that too. I think they're really fun. At the end of the day, I just want to tell stories that, allow people to enjoy a good story, maybe get creeped out a little bit. But that novel is probably my favorite. And then all of our legend books are just I co-wrote those with my best friend. So they were number one, a blast to write. We had a lot of fun writing them and researching them. But I don't know. I think Ghostly Tales of Pennsylvania is kind of a fun one because the East Coast is a little older. And so you get a lot of really cool history. And I think that's part of what I love about ghost stories is just there's such a cool connection to the past. And so in writing those books, we got to research a lot about, like the Civil War and, even like the founding of the nation, because there's just some really old parts of that area of our country. So, and gangster stuff, there's a gangster story in that one too. So, yeah, that's a fun one, but they're all a lot of fun.
I read some of Monsters of the South because I'm from the South, so I
Yeah.
kind of gravitated toward that particular book. And there's a story in it which I've done a couple of shorts on the Alabama White thing, but I did not know. I guess the story you had in there was from Jacksonville, Alabama. I
Hmm.
guess in the 1930s. That was
Someone else
really
said that
interesting.
too. And then I had someone reach out to me and say, we used to hear that story all the time as a kid growing up. So they were really familiar with it. That one's kind of wild because it was actually a story that the way the legend began, the roots of that legend, it was told to someone, a teenager, I believe, in the 1980s by their pastor. So you have, to me, when a pastor tells you a story, I'm like, oh, that's a credible resource, right? Like that's someone who's probably not going to be lying to you. But that's kind of where that legend started. Something that he said, I think happened to maybe his dad or his uncle or something.
Yeah, interesting. And most of the stories I have read or the research I've done on the Alabama White thing, most of them occur in North Alabama for some reason.
Hmm.
I have heard of one or two other stories that maybe one in West Alabama, and then a lady I know that lives maybe 10 miles from us. I'm trying to get her on an episode. She had an encounter with one in the I believe 1970s, where it was taking their livestock, killing their chickens, and she saw it, and her uncle, I believe, or either brother saw it running with, I think maybe possibly some of the livestock under its arm. So if I'm hoping I can get her on, but
That
that's
would be cool. Yeah. So being from Alabama, do you feel when you think of the Alabama white thing, do you think of it as being like a Bigfoot type of creature? Because I've heard some people say they don't think that's what it is, but to me that's what it reads like in my research.
yes, that's what I gather. That it's
Hmm.
more leans more towards the Bigfoot type of creature. Now there are stories of, I guess, it being somewhat maybe possibly having like a muzzle, like a
Hmm.
dog. as well, and there's very few of those, but mostly what I've read and researched is a Bigfoot type of
Yeah.
creature.
I found some that were kind of read a little bit more like a dog man type of creature as well.
Yes.
So, yeah. Yeah. I think with all of these creatures, there are variants to it. There's so many different types. Like, so for instance, in the Pacific Northwest, there was a sighting and a couple different sightings of what could only be described as a Bigfoot type of creature, but it had wings and it flew and like giant wingspan. So you have a flying Bigfoot. When I started to research that and found that story, I was like, I we have to put that in the book because that's so cool.
I've never heard that. So was it
Yeah.
hairy then, like a Bigfoot?
Yeah. It was hairy, just like a Bigfoot, but it had giant, almost like a bat type of wings. So the theory was that it was kind of in the area where Mount St. Helena had erupted. And so they said they started to have more sightings of cryptids at that time, and that, the eruption kind of decimated that mountainside there, and the habitat was all open, and the creatures were kind of, fleeing. And there was an uptick of those kind of sightings. So that was one of them from that time era, from that time.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
totally makes sense because there's a story also that the military, I believe, after the eruption, I don't know if you've heard about this, but um, moved a body of one with a
Oh.
helicopter in the early '80s. Well, I guess it happened in 1980 or '81, I believe. The eruption, Mount St.
Yeah,
Helens.
I think
But
so, in the 80s for sure.
Jessica, let me ask you this: what is your favorite cryptid?
I really love them all. I mean, Bigfoot is so prevalent. So I feel like when I'm writing a compilation of legends because we do these legend books for different regions, and you want to get like a mix of things, you're always going to have, I feel like every region has a plethora of Bigfoot sightings. And I do love Bigfoot. He's one of my favorites. The Bigfoot in my mind is nice. Like, I know there's some bad encounters with him, but um, I think of him as being my buddy and my pal. Like, I would go for a walk with him. But when I'm looking for stories for these books, the one that I am always looking for is like a Wendigo or a Skinwalker, because I just find that particular cryptid so fascinating. And they're not all over. They're not as prevalent. The stories aren't as prevalent. So I get excited when I find one of those. So that's my favorite one to write about.
Yeah, I have not heard of any stories of Wendigo. I have of a skinwalker, or I'm not actually. They were not real sure what it was. It was recorded actually. A friend of mine recorded one, and we did a comparison, like where it was standing compared to the fence, and my head was below the fence, and whatever this was about 2 feet
Oh,
above the
wow.
fence, and I'm right at 6 foot, so it had to be something that was 8 feet. But the thing about it was, it didn't have the shape of it. It was not like it was detailed.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have a lot of shape to it. It was really strange. There was a lot of activity on his properties.
Yeah. And was that now Alabama?
It was in North Carolina.
Oh, okay. I know I'm fascinated by some of these locations that, for lack of a better thing to call them, they're like the Skinwalker Ranch, where there's not just one type of activity going on, but you tend to have a lot of different paranormal activity, almost like it's an epicenter. And you have the UFO alien type of sightings, and then you have the Skinwalker encounters, but there's often Bigfoot associated with those locations as well. So you just get like a whole, I don't know, melting pot of cryptids in one place.
Yeah, that seems to happen. His particular property butts up to the South Mountains of North Carolina, which are
Hmm.
part of the foothills of the Appalachian mountain chain. So a lot of creepy things,
Yeah,
e-
a lot
eerie
of fun,
stuff that
creepy
happens.
things.
Yes, Jessica, let me ask you this as well. How do you balance the writing, the coaching, the podcast, all of your different things you have going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a challenge sometimes, sometimes I feel like I spend a lot of time right here. Like at this desk in this office. Good thing I like it. I think it's a cute space, but um And I have kids. I have 3 kids and they're getting older now. So that's getting easier. But when they were little and I was writing, it was kind of bananas. But it really is just, and as a creative person, you have so many different ideas and you have so many different things you want to do. I do a lot of sticky notes on my wall. I wish I could show you my wall right now. I have 2 maps up on the wall, and one of them is scribbled on with the region that we're currently writing a book in. And one of them has pins for all the different places that we've written stories about. So I love those maps. And then I have sticky notes all over the wall around them with like one section is like, what am I most drawn to working on today? And then what am I drawn to working on, but I'm going to work on later. So I have a lot of sticky notes that get moved around.
That's something I definitely need coaching on.
Yeah.
I have a dry erase board that I started using. I thought, okay, I can be a little more organized and detailed with this, and easy to change up, whatever I need done. It has the days of the week. And then that, I guess I started ignoring and started writing notes everywhere. And it's like you said, the creative aspect coming out, you have these ideas and then you write them down. Well, where do I write this at? And where does this
Yeah.
fit? And it can be difficult.
It's hard to keep them all organized. And it's hard to know which of your passions to chase in any given time, right? So, I just completed doing an online course, which is something I've been wanting to do for the past 3 years. I just have never given myself the permission to do it. And plus, with these legend books, we're so blessed to have a publisher who's very hungry for them. So, like last year, we had 4 come out. So we had to write 4 books in 1 year, and this year we have 3 coming out. So we had to write 3 books in 1 year. And then you still have your other stuff you're working on. But it's like what feels most pressing to you at the time, and also what brings you the most happiness. Because I tell my kids all the time, like, let the goal be to have fun and then let the universe figure out the rest. And it will. Like, I always feel like the universe figures out the rest when you're having a good time. It's when it becomes cumbersome and it's not fun anymore, then you need to sit down and reassess. Is this where my energy should go right now, or should I do something else? And with the online courses, it was like I do a lot of workshops in person, and I have a lot of people that listen to the podcast, Darkness Radio, or read my books that aren't local, and so they can't just travel to take one of my mindfulness workshops. So that was something I really wanted to get done. But it was fun. I will say for a minute it wasn't fun. I was feeling stressed about it because there's just so much that goes into it. But then I had to sit down and be like, okay, recenter, let the goal be fun, have fun with it.
Yeah. The amount of research, just in the particular book I read, Monsters of the South, and I'm assuming all the other books, it's quite a bit. So
Yeah.
when you sit down to do that, do you enjoy the research part of it, or finding out the stories themselves, or the final product?
I kind of love it all. The research is really fun. Sometimes that can get a little stressful though, because both my co-writer Natalie Fowler and I are really we think it's really important to pick stories that have as much primary source support as possible, or good quality secondary source support. So, like, if we can't get an interview with someone, which would be primary source support, or see them on like a show talking about it, so witnessing an interview that they did, or finding an interview that's in a newspaper, like a real reputable newspaper online. We do, sometimes when you're looking for a creepy story, and you're not finding that, let's say, Wendigo story, for example, that you want to have, or a Skinwalker story, I will sometimes even just go to Reddit and get on threads and look through them. I would never write a story from Reddit, but I would find the person. If I can get in touch with that person and get an interview with them, then that might be a story that makes it into the book. But yeah, I think the research is fun. It's fun to try to track down the good stories.
It is. It's fun to dig in and find out details and listen. I love hearing the witness part about
Yeah.
it, how they tell the story. And you can tell if somebody's legitimate
Yeah.
not embellishing, and from emotions in their face and their body language and so forth.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories from the Pacific Northwest was about a dogman encounter. And I found it by listening to a podcast because I'll listen to podcasts all the time. I just, when I'm working out, when I'm making dinner, when I'm driving somewhere. And I was listening to this podcast. I was really looking for I wanted a dogman story. And I found this podcast and listened to it. And the guy on there, I tracked him down. I'm kind of like a sneaky, creepy stalker because I listen to stuff like that. And then I'm like looking like, where can I find this person? So I found him on Facebook and I sent him a message and I was like, okay, I love your story. He was a pastor. So again, I find that to be a pretty credible source. And it was just a really crazy story. It's one of my favorite ones that I've ever written. And he was sending me pictures of like the dogman footprints in the snow on his rooftop that he found. And so I just had this really great, interaction with him. And then I was able to send him a signed copy of the book. And he was excited, because here we're telling his story. And for a lot of people, this is like one of the craziest thing that's ever happened to them. And a lot of times when you tell someone, you know, I saw a Bigfoot or I saw a dog man or I saw a ghost, people are like, okay, crazy, you know. But here I'm like, no, I don't think you're crazy. And I think, you had an experience and I'm excited to share it with other people. So I love that piece of it too, is telling people's stories and just kind of validating that you had an experience and I believe you.
Yeah, it's you have a lot of people that are afraid to tell stories because of
Yeah.
ridicule, and but to get to hear one, and one that is they experience something. It's good to hear. Really neat.
Yeah. It's legitimate to kind of hesitate to tell people because we've researched stories and then in the newspaper articles and the news reports, we'll find later that the people that shared the encounter are harassed by people, like phone calls and people outside their door making fun of them, so I don't know. I always believe people when they tell me a story. I try to get the best information I can. And if you can get multiple witnesses, I think that's an even more credible story to include in the book. So
Let me ask you this: if one of these cryptids, and I may use Bigfoot as an example because that's probably my favorite, of course, but
yeah.
it could be any of the cryptids. But if one of them got brought, I guess, to public view or brought to science, and science said, "Hey, this creature is real," would that take the mystery out of it for you, or the fun out of the story, or the research, or the subject itself?
No, I don't think so. I feel like, I feel like Bigfoot is real. I don't know if he is like an interdimensional type of creature. Like some people, that's a theory that people believe. Actually, when I did a presentation for MUFON here in Minnesota, I did some research about some of the cryptid sightings in my Monsters of the Midwest book and linked them to a number of UFO sightings that occurred at the same time. So some people think that it could be some sort of an alien type of creature. And then some people think it's just a creature that we haven't been able to identify yet. And that happens all the time. I mean, every year they're identifying new species of animals that we don't think about. So I don't think it would take the mystery out of it for me. I would still think it's fascinating that, he's around and, he's so mysterious and he hides so well.
Yes, yes, he's the hide and seek champion. That's for sure. Yeah, I believe for myself, it would. I almost don't want that to happen.
Yeah, would take
Kind
the
of.
mystery out of it.
Yeah, because I grew up. I guess maybe the Patterson Gimlin film, of course, was probably 10 or 12 years old, maybe when I first saw it or heard about it. And there wasn't much on, as far as you could not find something on TV, a documentary. And if something was, anything Bigfoot or Nessie or something like that came on, you were glued to the TV.
Yeah,
And I used to read Hardy Boys mystery books and that kind of thing. So I guess
I
I
read
enjoyed
those
mystery.
too.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah,
Nancy
and
Drew
Nancy
as well.
Drew. Yep.
Yeah, I did as well. So
Yeah. Well, and now we have so much of it. Like it's everywhere. We have so many opportunities to see reenactments and that sort of thing on cryptids and ghosts. And I love the show Paranormal Caught on Camera because they have a lot of stuff that it's like how can you say that didn't really happen? I always find it funny when I meet someone and they're like, "You believe in all of that?" And I'm like, "I find it weird that you don't."
yeah, some of that's hard to explain away. Some of it you might can explain away, but then there's some
Yeah.
things you're like, did that really happen? You know?
Yeah, and when they have video captures of it, I don't know. And plus it's something I've been experiencing my whole life, so then I'm like, well, yeah, if ghosts aren't real, I'm absolutely a lunatic. So,
And you don't want to be categorized as that, and I'm sure.
I mean, I guess whatever, I am what I am. But But there's been enough times where I've seen something and other people have seen it too. One of my favorite ghost stories happened at the Palmer House Hotel, and I didn't get to witness it myself. I had gone upstairs to take a nap before we were doing an event, a big retreat that weekend, and the hotel was full of our people there for the retreat. But some of our attendees, in addition to some of the people from my group, I have a group called Ghost Stories Inc. We're all professional artists and authors who perform paranormal investigations for creative inspiration. And so they saw it too. So this was witnessed by people that I know would not lie, but it was witnessed by multiple people. But there was a woman who walked in like period clothes from the 1920s, a very distinct hat on her head. She was carrying like a carpet bag, like Mary Poppins almost, and her outfit was very distinctive 1920s. And one of the guys from my group, when he was telling me about it later, he said, I thought it was weird because it's not Halloween. And I thought, why is this woman dressed so strangely? But she walked up to one of the attendees of our event and asked her who she would speak to about getting a room because she happened to be standing near the desk. And the lady said, well, and this woman is like a principal of a high school. Like she's, a very, I would consider a credible person. She probably has a master's degree, highly educated. And so she said, well, you could probably ask someone in the bar area. There's no one out here right now, but the hotel is full because there's an event here this weekend. And so the woman that she asked, Shelly went ahead and went to go walk upstairs to her room. And she said she got to the landing of the second floor and turned and started walking down toward her room. And she said the woman followed her up the stairs, never spoke to anyone about getting a room, never got a key. It was just immediate. Who do I speak to about getting a room? And then followed her up the stairs. And Shelley said it was so creepy. There was just such a strange feeling about her that she was like very uncomfortable. And then she sat down at the end of the hallway. There was a chair down there. And she said she saw the woman get to the top of the landing and basically walk forward and go into her room without using a key or anything. She just walked right into this room. And she texted her friends, I think I just saw a ghost. And later that night, she asked the guy who was staying in that room, Carrie, if his wife liked to dress in period clothes. And he's like, no, that's a weird question. And also, she's not here. Why are you asking me that? And she said, well, I saw a woman walk into your room.
Right.
And he said, wow, that's crazy because I went up to get all of my ghost hunting equipment. He's like a big ghost hunting guy. So he had everything charged for the night we
Right.
were investigating that night. All of his batteries were drained. And
That's
so they're
incredibly
sitting
eerie.
down there. Yeah, they're sitting down there talking about this right before we do our ghost hunting 101 and talk to them all about ghost hunting. And I overhear them and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And they tell me what happened. And I run and get the owner of the hotel and I tell her, and she's like, just a second. She leaves and she comes back and she has this framed photo of a woman. And they all said, that's her. That's who we saw. And she said, this is Hazel Palmer, the daughter of the people who built this hotel. And she's been dead for many years. I mean, that was from the 1920s. So, yeah,
Wow.
it's one of my favorite. I'm like, darn it. I went upstairs to take an old lady nap. I missed it.
That sounds like me. Yeah, that is, wow. I was going to ask you that. Did they know who that
Yeah.
might be? But that's,
And yeah, and the owner said, we have seen her multiple times, but we've never had her talk to anyone. So
strange. Really
yeah,
strange.
cool. So cool.
Our kids, we have 5 kids. So we took them and their spouses and boyfriend to Buffalo
Hmm.
That was their Christmas present for this past year, and or Niagara Falls. So we went into, usually when we go to a town like that, I'm going to look up diners, drive-ins, and dives. I'm going to find
Yeah.
at least one restaurant to try to go to. The food's usually good.
Yeah.
Well, we found a place, and it was in Buffalo, and it was in a neighborhood. The house was old. It was an older neighborhood, and it had been several different things over the years, and it was a fire station at one point, I think in the early 1900s. Well, there was an upstairs we were sitting by, and the lights were off, and the waitress, I said, have you ever had any, what's the story with the place? I was trying to get something out of her, and she wouldn't say much to begin with. Then she finally opened up. She said, well, I was upstairs one time and the water cut on, and I was the only one up there by myself. And
Mm.
so I thought, oh, wow, do you care if we go up there? And I don't know anything about ghost hunting. So I downloaded an app on my
Yeah.
phone
Yeah.
and went upstairs, and two or three of us went up there, and I had it screen recorded so I could record what was on the thermal on the app. We stayed up there for about 3 or 4 minutes and did not hear anything. And then about a week later, after I'd listened to it maybe twice, this crazy voice
Mm.
told us to get out. And I was like, are you kidding me? I would not, I would have gotten out, first of all. And second of all, what am I going to do with this recording? Am I going to delete this or what? So, but yeah, that was my one time with the ghost hunting. So
Yeah. Accidental EVP.
yes, and
Yeah.
it was very clear, and that's
Hmm.
what's so weird is none of us heard it, but the recording picked it up, and it was like,
Yeah.
wow. So
Yeah, I'm fascinated by EVPs too, and we've gotten quite a few of them over the years, and some of them are just so clear, and some of them are almost engaging with like what you're talking about too, which is also very interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty creepy after listening to it. And it was
Yeah.
eerie going up there, first of all, but because the lights were off and we were walking around like we were have been on the Travel Channel Ghost Adventures or something. So
Yeah. I think
uh,
that's one of the things for me that I've loved about this journey of really diving into the paranormal and just embracing that piece of me that used to be so scary is that now I don't find any of it scary. I just find it fascinating. But when I was younger, it was so scary to see things that other people weren't seeing. And that was terrifying. We've actually done some events for kids that have, experiences. Their parents will come with them and we'll do like a very kid friendly weekend where they get to just embrace that. And we'd set up games down in the basement of the Palmer house for the kids to play games and just feel comfortable with the spirit energy around them. And I guess that's to me like the greatest part of this is just learning that, okay, there's a lot of stuff we can't explain, but we don't have to be afraid of it.
yeah, there's a lot of mystery in the world,
Yeah.
that's for sure. No doubt about that. Jessica, thank you for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed this and
Me
enjoyed talking
too.
about all your books. And can you tell everyone where they can find you on social media and then find your books as well?
Yeah, so I just use my name, Jessica Freeburg. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, um, and I don't do Twitter much anymore. Everyone's mean there, but I am on TikTok or Twitter, so I won't post on there. But my website is just my name, jessicafreeburg.com. And you can find my books on there in the book link, or you can find them at Barnes and Noble or Amazon, any of the bookstores. They're in a lot of small bookstores too. They're carried by a lot of those smaller independent bookstores too. So support that. Support the small guys.
Yes, awesome. The listeners, you guys need to check it out. I read Monsters of the South, and there's several other books. How many total are there?
Gosh, I was just telling someone by this time next year I'll have 20 books out, which is crazy. We will have all of the regions for monster books in August. They'll all be out. So wherever you live in the US, you can find a book that features your region
Sure.
of monsters.
Yes, absolutely. I recommend everyone to check that out for sure.
They're fun.
Uh, yes. Jessica, at the end of each episode, I do a rapid fire Q&A where
Okay.
I will ask 3 questions. It's real casual, and it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
Okay. All right. I hope I don't say anything weird.
All right. Number one, favorite scary movie.
I love The Shining.
Okay. I, that's coincidental because we were just in Estes Park for Bigfoot
Oh,
days and we visited the hotel, the lobby, maybe. I'm not sure. The
yeah.
place is huge. It was really neat. They had some of the movie memorabilia in
Yeah.
there as well. So,
It's just a classic.
yes. Yep. Number two, name one thing on your bucket list.
I would love to go to Europe and explore some of those older areas, go in a castle,
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
find me a
Yeah.
medieval ghost.
All right. Number three, if you had a choice to be a superhero, what superhero would it be?
Well, is it weird if I want to be Batman because he's a dude?
No, no, not at all. That's my favorite, actually, Batman.
Yeah, I like Batman. I could be Catwoman. She's sexy, but Batman's tough, and the Michael Keaton Batman was my favorite.
The
So I'm gonna
early,
be yeah.
yeah, the early Batman movies were my favorite as well, no doubt about it. Well, Jessica, thank you again for coming on the show, and I will put a link in the description for your social media and where people can keep up with what's going on and find your books.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Yes, I enjoyed it as well. And for the listeners, if you've had an encounter, something strange or unexplained, email us at the Cryptid Crew Podcast at gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and God bless.